Good morning and welcome to Facebook Advertising Restrictions, How to Prevent and Resolve. So there has been a lot of questions regarding Meta restrictions on ad accounts and personal accounts. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today. So welcome to everyone who is here. So my name is Jennifer Baker. I'm part of the JBC agency, Pushing Digital Boundaries. We're a boutique digital marketing agency located here in Kingston. You can feel free to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. So what we're going to talk about today in terms of learning objectives, by the end of today's live training, participants are going to be able to understand the steps to prevent Facebook advertising account restrictions. We are going to recognize the steps to submit a claim if your account has been restricted from advertising, and then be introduced to Facebook ad rules. Okay, so you're probably here because either you, someone you know, a client, maybe a family member, they've encountered what's called a blocked or restricted account in Meta Ads Manager. So we're going to be going through that. So the restricted account, there's a few different ways that there is a restricted account. So we're going to kind of start broad and then we're going to narrow it down. So the restricted account, the personal account or asset you use, so it could be an ad account, a business manager, is restricted. So you cannot run ads. Basically, you're not allowed to run any paid advertising or use any of the Meta assets moving forward. So you usually get this lock. This is kind of the most recent graphic that we see. So it's this red lock saying, no, you cannot place ads on Facebook. And there's really a number of reasons why these restrictions occur. So the common reasons why you're restricted. So number one, they may suspect that your account is compromised or has been hacked because there is unique behavior happening on your account. To be honest, sometimes I get this because I know how to run ads very quickly. And sometimes it gets flagged that because I'm too efficient, oftentimes it does get flagged as a compromised or hacked account. So that one's an easy one to resolve. Another one would be a policy violation. And we're going to talk about policy violations a little bit later on this morning. Another one, which is a really easy one to fix, would be two-factor authentication. So more and more you will see that Meta requires advertisers to have two-factor authentication on both the personal account and the Meta Business Manager. So by turning this on, it will help and oftentimes will unlock your account almost instantly. And then the other one would be a new account. So if you're brand new to Facebook, maybe your business or your organization has never used a Meta product before, you create a Facebook account, or maybe an agency creates a Facebook account and they go to make ads almost instantly, that's a red flag to Meta that maybe we should limit how much they can do at one time. And then sometimes it's also an ad spend. So let's say that you were spending $100 a month on ads, and then in the next month, you're now spending $10,000 a month. Maybe you just had a big ad expansion, but that's a red flag as well. So that $100 to $10,000 can be too much. So three common restrictions and the solutions. So the most common restrictions that we see is a restricted personal account, a restricted Meta Business Manager, formerly known as a Facebook Business Manager, or a restricted ads manager. So there is a lot of overlap, but there's three ways basically that you can be restricted. So the first is what's called a restricted personal account. So the restricted personal account means that you, the individual, or you, the person, cannot use any of the Facebook or Meta assets for advertising. So that includes things like your Facebook ads, that includes your Meta pixel, again, formerly a Facebook pixel, a Facebook catalog, or a commerce manager. So oftentimes we see that personal accounts become restricted because there is potential hacking attempts. So if there's been multiple login attempts and it's kind of bouncing back, so there's that. And again, this one is also triggered by too much ad spend in a short amount of time. So again, if you're an advertiser who's been spending maybe $100 a month, and then it jumps up drastically to 1,000 or more, or something like that, it's going to flag to Meta like, this is suspect. We need to kind of put a hold on this account. So oftentimes it will look like this. So when you go to your ad account, it will just simply say ad account restricted since this date, and what has been restricted and what has been disabled. So what you can't do is, in this case, the example on here, can't run ads, can't use any assets, so create any audiences. And then your disabled assets are your personal ad account and any of your audiences. So that's one. So to resolve something like this, the first thing that you need to look at, so you're kind of doing a little detective work here. So the first thing that you need to do is go to your account quality. So you as a person, so this is you, in my case, Jennifer Baker, going to see if my account is okay. So I go to facebook.com/account quality. So this is the little screen that pops up when I go to that account, and it says if there's been any issues, recent issues. So in Facebook world, it's the last 30 days. So if there's anything outstanding or things that have been resolved. So you can look there. That's the first step that you're going to look at to determine what part of your ad account has been restricted. So then when you actually go through and say, and really you click the button and say, review my account, a button like this is going to come up, or sorry, a screen like this is going to come up, and it's just saying we're reviewing this account. So in my case, we're reviewing this account to see if it's been correctly disabled or not. My favorite thing is when they say if it's been disabled or not, is they'll say, oh, we accidentally did this. Oops. Sorry for any inconveniences. So this is where now, once you've submitted the review, so we're back over here. Once you submit this review, this little kind of pop-up is going to be there and just say, we're reviewing your account. Okay, so that's the first step. So that's first, if it is you, the person that's been restricted. Now, the second type is a restricted Meta business manager. And this is what more commonly we see, and what more commonly we see in our agency, what's been restricted. So oftentimes it's indicated by that kind of banner at the bottom where it says your advertising access is restricted. And then it kind of puts a shot to your heart a little bit, and it says you're no longer allowed to use Facebook products to advertise. And it kind of hurts a little bit. So oftentimes this one will occur because you didn't follow community standards, Meta advertising standards, and other policies. So we're going to talk about those in a little bit, and we're going to kind of go through some examples. And again, this one might also be a suspected, compromised, or hacked account. Sometimes we see that it's a two-factor authentication. So I want to say in the last year, Meta has been putting this blocker account, so this kind of scary banner, if you don't have two-factor authentication on your Meta Business Manager. So if that doesn't exist, sometimes that's, again, a quick fix to turn on two-factor authentication. So I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. So when you are in your Meta Business Manager, so business.facebook.com/settings, it's under here, under security. And you can see here, this example, it says two-factor authentication, no one. So that's where you need to make it you or whoever, your marketing manager, whomever owns the account. And oftentimes that's, again, a quick fix. Sometimes it will ask for personal identification to verify that the business manager is in the possession of the right person. So the right person owns that business manager. So depending on how the business manager is set up, so this little verifying ID or verifying identity with ID, and this can be really tricky depending on how you've set up your business manager. You either have to verify you as a human person with your personal identification. So that might be a driver's license or a passport. Or B, if it's been set up under the business name and this is the business asset, it has to be verified with business information. So that would be articles of incorporation or your business registration. That one is a bit more tricky. So oftentimes what we see here, you do need to talk to a Meta representative. So when you are in your business manager, in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a question mark, and you're going to tap that. When the question mark comes up, you get this menu, and you want to contact support team. Okay. They will not fix it on the first time. I hate to tell you, they will not fix it on the first time. Oftentimes, and I find this, I know more than the representative who's helping me. So I find I have to go through sometimes 2 or 3 Meta service representatives for them to actually understand what I'm asking them to do. So if at first you don't succeed, try tomorrow and get a different Meta help person with you. So I want to say last year I was doing this for a local downtown business owner, and it was a very messy situation of who owned what and restricted ad accounts, and it was a mess. And it took me probably 6 weeks and 4 different Meta representatives for them to finally understand what I was asking them to do. And we got it resolved. It was fixed. It got cleaned up, but you have to stay persistent with it. So this contact support team does work oftentimes between like the 9 and 5 general business hours. You are connected to an actual person. Mind you, they are probably working with 3 to 4 other people at the same time. So it is a little bit slow to talk to them. And oftentimes it's hard for them to go off script. So again, stay persistent with them. I've had lots of cases resolved in this manner. Okay. So that one can be a helpful one. And then the last common, I'll say, ads manager restriction is the restricted ads manager itself. So we've talked about the personal account, we've talked about the business manager, and now this one is the ads manager. So there's kind of 3 separate pieces. So this one is similar to what you would find in a personal account restriction. So here it's the business ads, the Meta Pixel, formerly Facebook Pixel, any of your catalogs or commerce. So if you are an e-commerce store connected with Shopify, all of that's disabled. Any of your audiences that you've created. And this one, you can't use any pages for your ads. So if you've got a Facebook page for your business, that can't be included in the ad. Okay. And then this one often comes by, it's almost solely on you're not following their rules, terms of service, and policy, and so on. Okay, so we're going to go through some examples on this. So this one, again, is a similar process that I like to direct people to, but oftentimes we kind of take it over a little bit, we're a little bit more persistent with them. So again, similar process, contacting support, submitting proper identification for you as a person, as well as you for your business that you own. Okay. So those are the 3 main restrictions that we see and that are most common. There is another one, it's just related to a page, but that's spam related, so we're not going to worry about that. So these policies. So Facebook has introduced a number of policies related to their ads, and they're here to keep the community safe. And by community, I mean people who use Facebook and Instagram for personal use. So they have a number of policies, including what's called a community standard policy. And it's built upon 4 main principles. The first one being authenticity, meaning we don't want people to be using multiple accounts. So what I find is people try to circumvent Facebook rules and try to keep things separate. And for example, I could have me personally, Jennifer Baker, for personal, and then I make a secondary account, personal account for my business. They don't want people doing that. They want everybody's actions under one account. In terms of the next one would be safety. So again, keeping people safe, dignity and privacy. So those ones are a little bit more kind of obvious, but we'll dig a little bit deeper. But the main one here is don't create multiple accounts. Don't create multiple accounts for you or your clients. And then advertising standards. So if you're in Ontario, if you're in Canada, you probably often see, advertising standards, and it's kind of a promotional thing to, keep people safe from predatory, ads and false advertising and so on. So Meta adheres to this as well. Although people don't think it, they do adhere to it. So the kind of overarching concept here is to keep people safe from discriminatory practices, keeping people safe from frauds, having a good experience overall, so they're not seeing content that is offensive or discriminatory, and then promoting transparency, so that again reduces that false advertising. Now here's where people start to falter a little bit and where we run into trouble with restricted ad accounts. So this one I want to say is pretty self-explanatory, but you cannot promote things like illegal products, discriminatory practices, inflammatory content, or vaccine discouragement. So that one's pretty easy. That one makes sense. There's also things like deceptive content. So unacceptable business content, cheating and deceitful, unrealistic outcomes. And unrealistic outcomes sometimes ties into weight loss products and services that people do. So sometimes people get caught up in that. There's also prohibited financial content. So that includes things like payday loans and bail bonds and things like that. And then spyware and malware. That one's pretty self-explanatory. The next one, dangerous content, again, pretty self-explanatory. Unsafe substances, you can't run ads for, any weapons or ammunition or tobacco. Tobacco, we're gonna kind of edge into that world a little bit, okay? And then we've got things like objectionable content. And this is where most businesses start to run into trouble. You're thinking objectionable content, that's not me, but sometimes it can. So we've got things like adult content, and you think, okay, I don't do that. But there are retail stores that have those types of products, and they instantly kind of run into that barrier that they cannot do any sort of meta advertising. We've got things like profanity, but that also includes things like poor grammar. So when you say poor grammar, we're not going to go full on, Grammarly on you. But if you're using too many exclamation points or too much punctuation, too many spelling errors, or using the one example that comes up in my brain is if you're trying to say sex and circumventing that, you use a $ in an ex, for example. Then we have low quality content. So that could be poor images. They're too blurry. And personal attributes. This is again where we start to get into this. We get into special ad categories here. Any sensational content or anything related to personal health and appearance. Okay. And then where many people start to run into issues is this content specific restrictions. And now you can probably start to see your business in here, maybe, and say, why would I get restricted? And these are some of the content specific restrictions. So many of them can do advertising, but they have to get special privileges to do so from Meta. They have to apply. So alcohol. So yes, local breweries or craft breweries, they can do advertising, but they have to adhere to special rules. And in Ontario, it would be 19 plus. In parts of America, it would be 21 plus, for example. cosmetic procedures and wellness. We get into financial insurance products and services. Again, that's a kind of an interesting one that we'll get into a bit. Then we have online gambling, social casino games. This one's been this one's been a challenge for me. And then any sort of subscription services. So I want to pick on alcohol, for example. So the example that I want to talk about is maybe a craft brewery. They're just opening, local business. There's, 3 employees and they want to run meta ads. They can run ads. They just have to adhere to the local laws. So we're in Ontario, so you can't target people under the age of 18. You can do 19 plus. That's fine. That's okay. It may take longer for your ad to get approved because they have to look at it now. So this would include anything related to alcohol sales, people holding maybe a beverage in their hands, different recipes saying, use this craft beer in this recipe. So there's nothing wrong with advertising, but you do have to say 19 plus and include that within your audience. Now here, if you don't, this is the problem. If you don't, this is where your account starts to get restricted. Okay. Now the personal attributes is also something that people start to get kind of stuck on as well. So previous to 2016, you could do very niche targeting on meta products. And you could target people based on, this is actually really scary that they even allowed this in the first place. But you could target people based on religion, ethnicity, race, age, sexual orientation, any disability, physical or mental health, financial status, which is terrifying, voting status, and criminal record. Okay. So you probably remember maybe what happened in America in 2016 and the presidential election and so on. So a lot of this got brought to light from that election and that overarching issue. So at that point, and once that was understood, Facebook introduced these policies so that people couldn't be targeted based on these attributes. And then that trickles down to the rest of us and all the other advertisers. Okay. So the example here that I want to talk about is that financial status. So the financial status could look something like this. Are you bankrupt? And I remember seeing ads like this years ago, like 2014, 2015. Are you bankrupt? Our firm has solutions. So what the challenge with this is it's an implied knowledge about your personal financial situation using the word you. So you can do this, but it's more about phrasing. Explain how your firm can help someone go through bankruptcy. So removing that identifying you from the ad. So you can still talk a little bit about bankruptcy. It's not as pointed, however. Okay. So from this kind of 2016 election overarching situation, Facebook introduced what's called special ads categories. And these are extremely important for anybody who is doing ads. These ad categories are going to help to ensure that you don't get restricted in the future, and it's going to prevent those blocks and restrictions. So the ad categories are what you're going to see on the first page of your campaign when you're creating an ad. And most of the time they get looked over and people go, oh, I don't apply to that. Like, it's not me. More than likely, you are within a special ad category at this point. So the first one, social issues, elections, and politics, maybe not, unless we have some politicians or government officials, perhaps. Where it starts to get really nitpicky is the next 3. They're harder to classify. So housing. So this applies to any property listings. It can be real estate. It can be mortgage brokers. It can be anything related to home insurance, insurance products, all of that. So this is where realtors are having a big challenge doing any sort of advertising at this point, because they have to choose a special ad category. As soon as you choose a special ad category, there is no option to do more refinement of your audience. So I live in Kingston, Ontario. So I would, if I was a real estate agent and I said housing, I'm going to sell this house, I would say Kingston. It has to be at least 15 miles. So Kingston plus 15 miles in radius, 18 plus. That's as far as it can go for targeting at this point. Years ago, we could do more refinement, but now we can't. The next one is employment. So that includes anything related to job openings, job offers. If you have internships, if you do any sort of professional certifications, programs, or related opportunity. So it's really employment and education is how I view it. And again, this is one where people get caught all the time. They say, I was just running an ad to get, a new server into our restaurant. You can't target just women, or you can't target like a younger clientele. It has to be 18 plus because it's related to employment. That is the biggest one that I see people get caught up on. And then credit, also one that people think, oh, I don't know, I don't do that. Has to do with credit card offers, which many of us, we're not credit card people. Like, I use them, but I don't give them to you. But it has to do with loans, vehicle loans. So when we hear, 0.9% financing, as soon as you get that in, special ad category or long-term financing. So this is why you're not seeing in promoted ads any sort of rates. So think about whether it's a bank, a mortgage broker, so on. In a promoted post, we can't include that. It has to be a special ad category. Okay, so if you're a car dealership and you want to say that you have 1.98% financing on the red trucks, if you're doing a paid ad, it has to be a special ad category because it has to do with financing. So these special ad categories reduce that discriminatory or predatory pricing that we see on vulnerable community members. So getting a little bit more deeply, I got excited on that slide. I talked a lot there. So in terms of housing, it's your homeowners, mortgage insurance, housing loans, equity appraisal, repair services. So if you fall within that category and you want to run a paid ad, special ad category. Same thing with credit. I couldn't find Canadian dollar bills, so here we are with American. So it has to do with credit card ads, any mortgage loans, refinancing, personal business auto loan service ads. So you can do organic posts, you just can't do targeted ads. And again, employment is probably the biggest one that people get caught on. Hands down, biggest one people get caught on because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They're like, I'm just doing a job ad. You have to keep it open to everybody. So that's related to any open positions that your business or your organization is promoting, any internships, paid or unpaid, any professional certificate programs, job boards, job ads. And I would even say education is in there as well. We've got that certificate program, so I'm going to show you about an example that I ran into. So these special ad categories, it just simply limits how much you can do in terms of targeting. So again, as far as you can go is 18 plus, a certain geographic area. So in my case, Kingston plus 15 miles. I cannot do all the other wonderful targeting that I like to talk about in other workshops, 18 plus. That's what the special ad categories do. And what happens is people are told, oh, don't do those special ad categories because then you can't do targeting. And that happens, and then you lose your ad account. And then you have to come to webinars like this to get information on how to get your ad account back. So if at any doubt, say that you're a special ad category. So I'm going to give you an example of one that I ran into last year. You'll probably laugh at this. And it wasn't quite this one. I was looking for my exact ad and I couldn't find it. So Thousand Islands Kayaking, I did some work for last year. And they had a level 2 skills course on learning how to kayak. And it wasn't this exact like verbiage, it was a different one, but this is as far as I went. And I went and I targeted people in a certain geographic area who liked kayaking, that was it, geographic area and kayaking. And it got flagged because it needed to be under employment because of the professional certification and the word course. So even so much as you're somebody who teaches knitting courses or crafting courses or kayaking courses or camping courses, they're all within that special ad category because as Meta views it, it's education, and education should be open to everybody and equal opportunities across the board. So for something like this, not that you want to circumvent it and go around kind of their special ad categories, but it's about how it's phrased. You may not use, like, you could choose not to use the word course. So come join us for our level 2 running September 14 to 18. Not use the word course, just level 2 kayaking, right? And then you can have it. Now, some people will also say, well, just put it in the graphics. So you can see this beautiful picture of the kayakers. It will also pick up the word course in the image. So if you think you're trying to get around Facebook rules, it's also going to recognize the word course in that image, okay? So something as simple as kayaking and a kayaking certification course can get flagged. And that's something that happened to me last year. And it was new to me because it was outside of kind of formal education, employment. It was just a recreational course. So that was something new that I learned. And when your ads get restricted, and in this case, it was my ad got restricted, it doesn't tell you why it's restricted. It just says, hey, Thousand Islands Kayaking, your ad's restricted. So then you have to know to go back through all the policies and say, what part of this did I mess up? So I went back and I'm thinking, does any part of this image look like it's alcohol or a controlled substance? Like, no. And I'm like, it doesn't include anything related to financing or loans. Like, I don't even think we talked about pricing in it. And then it was the word course. And I said, that probably has to do with certifications and courses. And as soon as I removed that, I changed it, it was fine. So you have to know all of those policies that we talked about to be able to identify what the problem is, because they won't say, hey, Jennifer, just to let you know, you can't use the word course in here, or you should be a special ad category because of this. They won't say that. It will just say your ad has been either declined or restricted. And if you don't change it and you just say, oh, just submit again, this is where you run into trouble. And Meta will say, oh, Jennifer doesn't know what she's talking about. We're just going to restrict her account because she doesn't understand our policies. She doesn't understand our procedures. So that's why that background information is so important. So when I say get familiar with the policies, there's a lot here. I gave you the high level in the previous slides that are going to be helpful. You can kind of self-identify within those. But today is March 28th. And tomorrow those policies could be updated and changed. So it's a matter of kind of self-educating yourself to make sure that you're continually up to date on the policies and to ensure that you're adhering to them. So it's even maybe a reminder in your calendar to go back, once a year and say, has anything changed? Are the products or services that I'm offering, has that changed? Will that affect our ads in any way? Because that's the thing with social media, as you've probably identified, it always changes and nobody sends you a memo when it changes. So this is the best place to go. And again, as a reminder, maybe once a year, and just check and make sure you're doing everything you should be. So other little ways to resolve. So kind of our main ways to resolve, because I've gone through my fair share. So we've talked about some of the ones previously. So if your personal account is restricted, your Meta Business Manager or your ads account is restricted, there's those really two options there. This is another place that you can go for some support. And sometimes you don't know what you did wrong. So this might be a really good place to start. For this support portal, you do need to have an ads account, which might sound a little bit funny because you're here because you do run ads, but you do need an ads account here to basically say you need support with. This one, they do claim to get back to you within 2 hours. That's not true. Expect a little bit longer than that. So this one is under facebook.com/business/help/support/get-help. Very long. And I'm not sure that you can find this anywhere in the Facebook navigation, but this is a really good tool if kind of the other don't work. And then the other one, as I mentioned, is this business.facebook.com/settings, and then help, and then contacting the support team. Sometimes this button doesn't exist. So depending on how many ads that your organization or your Meta Business Manager has run, this option may not exist. So you can submit, so it won't be a chat function, it will simply be an email function. So the accounts that I have, we can chat with them, but sometimes for people who are new, it's simply an email function. So that would be another option for you as well. So you can contact the support team that way. And then the other thing is my team loves doing this. So if you run into trouble at any point, I have navigated my fair share. Nady in the polka dot there, she has navigated her fair share. So we can certainly help you through that. So how to prevent this in the future? Because it's great to know kind of all the policies, but how can you prevent this from happening in the future? And even last night, I was getting emails from people saying, you know, I've given up. I don't know what to do anymore. So number one, it's familiar yourselves with the policies, and it's that continually learning what is approved or not approved content and what you can and cannot do. The second part is to enable two-factor authentication, and that includes your personal account, which I call Blue Facebook. We all are familiar with the blue icon with the F. That's Blue Facebook, that's personal, as well as your Meta Business Manager with that two-factor authentication that I showed you earlier. So you need to have it on both, but it's kind of routed through the same thing. And for those of you who think, oh, it's so annoying, I don't want to get the login, it's just, it's really not that bad. It often will remember your device. So whether you're on a laptop or a desktop or a mobile device, it will remember your device and only ask you on occasion, every so often. Where it does get triggered is if there is the new login. So let's say you get a new laptop, that's triggered. Maybe you're working with an agency and they log in, that gets triggered, but it's only the once. And to be honest, if you get nothing out of today's session, but to turn on two-factor authentication, please do that. The amount of people, even in the last year, who I know who have lost their Instagram accounts, who have lost their Facebook accounts, who have had ads run on their behalf, even for a short amount of time, that are horrendous with their name associated with them, is awful. Because it happens. And I've had, 3, 4, maybe 4 business owners, even in Kingston. They've totally lost their accounts, completely gone. And they've had basically spam ads running and charged to their credit card because they didn't have two-factor authentication on. And this is why Meta is enforcing it so much. And then the last section is the special ad categories, and really familiarizing yourself with those special ad categories. And again, there are people out there who say, oh, you don't need to do them. You know, it's not required. It limits how much you can target. Yes, it is, because they don't want discriminatory practices or predatory pricing or predatory advertising. That's why. It's for the greater good. So do use the special ad categories when they are required. Okay. All right. We're almost at the end. So what we talked about today, so we talked about the steps to prevent Facebook ad account restrictions. So we talked a lot about the policies and the special ad categories. Submitting that claim. So giving you, I think there's 3 to 4 different options for submitting approvals and claims on accounts. And like I said, it does take multiple times sometimes, and sometimes different accounts to do that. And then being introduced to the Facebook ad rule. So once you've figured out maybe what you've done wrong, it's not doing it again in the future to have your account flagged and restricted. Okay. So thank you so much for attending today. I hope you learned a little bit. I hope you have some resources so that you can go and start to reclaim and get your ad account active again. If you do run into any trouble, my team is certainly happy to help. So feel free to reach out, and we're always happy to help and support you. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and then if there's any questions, I can take any questions.